You are listening to the One Day at a Time Recovery Podcast. On this podcast, my guests share their stories of alcoholism, addiction, and how they recovered so that you can too. My hope is that you find the inspiration and resources you need to let go of what's holding you back so that you can transform into the person you were always meant to be. Ready? Here we go. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure you're familiar with the whole shame spiral of drinking. You know, swearing to yourself that you'll never drink like that again, the rush of shame and anxiety after a bad night of drinking, only to find yourself feeling better by the evening and starting the cycle all over again. Well, what if nobody is telling you your drinking is getting out of hand? What if you have to come to the conclusion all on your own? Well, that's exactly what happened to today's guests. In this episode, I'll be joined by author, TED Talk speaker, and recovery advocate, Samantha Perkins, who not only shares the dark side of drinking, but how she found her own path to recovery outside of a traditional program. We do mention a ton of books, so I would like to encourage you to check out our partner, Audible. It's a monthly membership where you can download all the books we mention, but in audio format. And oftentimes it's read by the author, which is actually really cool. For me, audiobooks are great because I can listen when I'm walking the dog, working in the garden, puttering around the house, driving, working out. You get the picture. In fact, I have grown so accustomed to listening to audiobooks that I actually rarely buy physical copies anymore. And for my listeners, you can actually get your first book free when you sign up by visiting odatchat.com. There's an Audible logo on the right, and so you click that and it'll take you to sign up. I actually have currently 211 titles on my phone right now, so when I tell you it's awesome, I am not even exaggerating. Anyway, I'm excited to share this conversation with you. So without further delay, please enjoy this episode with Samantha and let me know what you think. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to have you. I saw your TED Talk and I immediately was like, yes, I must reach out to her and find out if she's available to do the podcast, because that was an amazing TED Talk you gave. How long ago was that?
Thank you so much. That was in 2022. And so it's been a couple of years. Yeah.
Couple of years. What was that process like?
I will tell you, like, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I'm anxious in general. And so I really wanted to do this. It was like something that I was like, I'm going to do a TED Talk one day. And I was so excited to be chosen. But then after I was selected, I was like, oh my gosh, now I have to do a TED Talk. And so I put a lot of pressure on myself and it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
I had months and months to like prepare and write the speech. And then there's this I'd done a lot of public speaking, but the whole speaking without any kind of like cards or PowerPoint or anything, that made it just extra hard. So
Wow, that's intense. Is it true that they have coaches?
I think a lot of people have coaches. I did not, it wasn't like something that was offered to me, although I did work with an editor to help me with my speech a little bit, just so that I had that peace of mind, like, okay, this is sounding okay.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, I heard they have coaches and they help you sort of go through the whole thing and
They didn't, but they did, like, you had to submit your speech and then they would give you feedback, and then it was kind of hard because I was, like, memorizing it. I mean, I'm trying so hard to, like, memorize it, and then they're giving
right.
feedback, and then, I'd have to take out a part, and then I'm like, "Oh, no, I've memorized that part." So, it was a really challenging process, and I'm so glad I did it because it really, stretched me in a lot of ways, and now
Yeah.
when I do public speaking, I'm not nearly as nervous because that was kind of like the one of the hardest that I've ever done. So,
That's the highest bar.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it was during COVID, and so everyone there was in a mask. And, like when you're
Oh,
speaking, well, I couldn't really see anyway because there was a lot of, like there were lights on the
lights,
stage.
yeah.
But like it's nice to like look out and see someone like nodding or smiling, and all I saw was just the eyes of strangers staring right back at me.
Oh my, that would be rough. I mean, when I do
Yeah.
public speaking, I feed off the energy of the
Yeah.
crowd. So to not be able
Yeah.
to do that, that would be really rough. But well
Yeah.
done. You did a
Thank
great
you.
job. I feel like it's really helping a lot of people, which is, that's we're in the business of trying to help. We're like these little helpers trying to spread the love around. So
E
well done.
exactly. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
well done. I wanted to start. I like this. I play this little game called the lightning round, which is actually very slow, but I like to front load the episode with some resources. So, when you think about when you first got sober, were there any books that were especially helpful?
Yeah, books were the way to kind of my sobriety journey, and so, I have to say the first book that I really came upon that changed everything was The Naked Mind by Annie Grace. I needed a little bit of the science, to help me along, and I just loved how scientific it was versus, some of the other things that I had read about, like,
Like emotional
yeah,
or
exactly, exactly.
personality? Yeah.
I was already way in emotionally, and, I was already,
We're all
you know
clear.
yeah, exactly. I had enough of, I mean, at that the point that I found it, I had already been self-loathing for many, many years, and so I needed some, like, practical science, and that really, really had an impact on me. So I would say that, for anyone like who likes that kind of sciency fact-based information, that was a really great book for me.
There's something about science, looking at this through the scientific lens, that seems to make it like it's impersonal.
Yeah,
Right? Like,
exactly.
these are the mechanics, this is the cause and effect, this is what it's doing to you. Like, once you ingest alcohol, there is no, unraveling that chain of chemical reactions. Like, once it starts, right? So it's
Yeah,
not personal.
yeah, and I think I'd already been trying to heal in all of the wrong ways, and one of those was by, like, thinking about what I was putting in my body and what I was doing with my body. And so that book just kind of aligned right with that. It was, giving me more reasons of, taking care of yourself versus, like how this affects your brain and how this affects your mental health.
Right.
And that really just, yeah, kind of just sat with me and helped me.
Yeah, that's a great book. It was fun to have her on the podcast. When I had her on the podcast, it was kind of early on in my interviewing career, so I was a little fangirling on her a little bit. So it was a little embarrassing, but bless her heart. She was good.
You didn't seem
When
that
you
way
look back,
when I
no.
listened. No, you seem totally like chill.
Oh, that's so good. Like, it's so funny how we're so hard on ourselves. I
I know.
listened to it again recently because I republished it and I was like, "Oh my god." I was like, "Calm down. Be a professional." But anyway, it's fine. I'm glad it doesn't come off that way. When you look back on, the time that you've been sober, is there a reoccurring theme in terms of like a mantra or a quote that you live by, or a reoccurring theme?
Yeah, probably there are quite a few. When you ask about this, I think about when I was really early on in sobriety, I came across this meme, and I don't know who to give credit to, but it's a picture of a horse tied to a little flimsy plastic chair. Okay, like its rein is tied to this flimsy plastic chair, and it says, "Sometimes the things holding you back are all in your head." And
Oof.
I love that because this horse could just literally walk on, but it doesn't because it thinks it's tied down, and this chair it
Yeah.
could pick up. And that just really, I mean, I was that horse, just holding myself back, thinking that I was stuck from all of these things and so much fear. So I do think
Yeah.
about that a lot. And every time I'm faced with like another challenge, I just picture that meme.
But yeah, no, that's a funny meme. That's like, what's funny is like that's how they train elephants. Like when they're babies, a baby elephant will get tied to a stake in the ground, and it just grows up thinking like it can't get away. And then so when it's a grown adult, they don't realize that they can just pull the stake out. It's really interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're like baby elephants.
Yeah. Exactly. It's a good metaphor though.
Right? Yeah, that's really good. Do you have a regular self-care practice that you do, whether like it's in the morning or at night?
Yes, for sure. I'm a morning person, probably from all of those late nights spent. I'm just so grateful for another morning. And so I do a little meditation and a little journaling every morning before I ever look at my phone or get going in any way. I just try to use that time when I'm still kind of in a dreamy state before my thinking brain comes in to reflect and breathe and, kind of prepare, set an intention for the day ahead. And I think that it's no different than brushing my teeth or taking a shower. It's just part of what I do. And it really makes a difference that versus when I used to, get up, start checking my email right away or, hop out of bed with the adrenaline
Right.
pumping, thinking of all the things I had to do kind of thing. So it's something that I really don't stray from anymore.
How do you practice meditation? Are you doing it in silence or with an app? How do you do it?
I have an app called Insight Timer, and I really like it because you can kind of pick and choose, duration, what kind of thing you're looking for. And so I did that for a while. Then I started practicing in silence to see how, if I could do it. It's a lot harder than practicing with kind of like a guided meditation. But sometimes now I'll go back and forth. Like do enjoy the silence now a little bit more. So, and I'm
Nice.
definitely, since practicing in silence, more picky about who I want to guide. I like a guide who's a little bit slower, doesn't talk as much, so that I have some time to think.
That's great. The silence is a lot harder. I use an app called Waking Up. So there's Audio Shanti, I think is his name, but he does a combination of like he talks a little bit and then there's like long silences and then he breaks in and talks a little more. So it's kind of nice. You get like the best of both worlds. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I think I would like that.
Actually, so Waking Up is a paid app, but if you're on a budget, you can email them and they'll either reduce or waive the fee, which is nice.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
I know it's really good. What is one thing that you wish you knew when you first got sober?
I would say I wish that I knew that it was okay for me to just explore my relationship with alcohol in the same way that I explore all things that I do with my life. I wish that it didn't hold so much stigma and that I didn't have to look at it as all or nothing, because I think if I knew that earlier on, then I could have saved myself. I mean, I would have stopped drinking sooner and I would have halted the self-destruction a little bit. But
Right.
I thought once I started exploring the idea of sobriety that it meant living a life of misery, no more drinking forever and living a life of misery. And so I just couldn't even go there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It does feel like loss in the beginning. Like I was terrified of losing the one thing that I love so much. It was like the
Yeah.
one thing that was helping me. And so the idea of losing it was really hard. But yeah, on the other side of it, it's like, oh, we have a ton of fun. We don't waste a bunch of money, and we don't get hungover the next day.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Who knew? What's one thing you learned about yourself since you've been sober?
Most of my drinking was rooted in kind of like this anxiety, just constant fear of everything. And the alcohol really damped down that fear until it made it a lot worse.
Right.
But I think that I'm just so much more confident. I believe in
Mm.
myself. I trust myself. I think I've overcome this huge thing. Like, I'm not going to drink anymore. And if I can do that, I can do anything, kind of thing. And so that is something that it fuels me and I feel so excited about.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah, self-confidence. All you had to do was ditch
Yeah.
the booze. Seems like a
Yeah.
fair trade. Oh my god.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about how we got here. I'm always curious about family of origin stuff. What was your family like when you were growing up?
I grew up in a great home. My parents were super loving. They were married. I had a much older sister who was actually 12 years older than me. And so by the time she graduated from high school and moved to college, I was just 5 years old. So I kind of grew up as an only child, even though I had a sibling. It was real clear early on, like, my mom's side of the family, they were drinkers and my dad's side wasn't. And so for me, I started creating this like dialogue in my head that like drinking was super fun. There wasn't like this sense of like doom around alcohol. It was just really like something that people did to have a good time. I loved it when they would have parties and get together because I knew we were all, they would be laughing, the adults would be happy. And so that's when I kind of started forming like, oh, alcohol is super fun. I love this. I can't wait till I can do it. you know? And I think my parents did a good job. I mean, I can remember times because we have extended family members or even friends who issues with alcohol. I knew that it was happening, but I was kind of shielded from it. It wasn't something that affected me personally, although there was always like this message like alcohol's awesome until it's not. You know, it was both like radiant and dark. And so I had a kind of a wild imagination and I put these things, these stories together in my head. And that's what I came up with is that, alcohol, you're either just having a blast with alcohol and everything's perfect, or you've got this horrible dark side and you can't ever be like the rest of us kind of deal.
Right. How old were you when you finally got to try it for yourself?
Oh, I was a teenager in high school, I think, when I got drunk for the first time. It was the same disaster that it was for the rest of my drinking career, just not just bad mistake, bad decision after the next, and just super sloppy, couldn't tolerate anything. So
Sounds
so
familiar. Mm.
yeah. So, but I was, a little older. My dad drank a lot. He drank at night, which looked like my mom. She drank very just on occasion, and it was usually one drink, and it was like a mudslide, like something that was more
Oh,
like a milkshake than it was,
my favorite.
right. And so there was alcohol in our house, but I wasn't like sneaking it, or I was waiting until I was out of the house with other people, just partying in high school and then in college.
Okay, we had a little technical difficulty, but I think we're on Zoom now, so we should be okay. But how about we pick up where you first started drinking? Like, when was your first drink?
Okay, yeah. So I don't remember my exact first drink. I'm thinking it was somewhere in high school. I didn't really drink much in high school, but I did have a couple of incidents.
That's where the shenanigans usually begin.
Right, right. By the time I graduated from high school the summer before college and then just into college, I was drinking a lot. What I considered to be just regular young person party drinking, but it
Yeah.
was pretty much regularly.
Yeah. Did you have like this, like the symptoms, right? Like blacking out or like, alcohol poisoning, being really sick the next day? Did you have those in the beginning?
Yeah, absolutely. I can remember well, I didn't know anything about my tolerance. I mean, I don't think anybody does when they first start drinking, but I
Yeah.
just assumed that I could just drink as much as I wanted. And so I remember one of the first times that I drank a bottle of Arbor Mist wine out of a straw.
Ugh.
I it was peach wine, peach
Mm,
Arbor Mist
delicious.
wine. Yeah. And so I was just brutally sick the next day. And that was probably the combination of the crappy sugar involving the Arbor Mist plus the alcohol. But yeah, I from early on, I would always when I was binge drinking, I would black out. I couldn't remember anything. People were always taking care of me. I'm the one they're dragging
Oh,
from
you were
from the
that girl.
yeah, exactly,
No
exactly.
shame. So was I, actually.
Oh, so fun times.
What's interesting is your statement of, I thought I could drink as much as I wanted. And what I kind of keyed into was like, those of us who develop issues with alcohol, it's like what we want to drink is way disproportionate to our abilities.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense now because I just was like, I mean, I wanted to drink from the time that before people started coming over, before the party started until way into the night, and I just
Yeah.
didn't think, I mean, I thought I could and I thought that that would be fine. And so I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people who like sip their drinks, and so those are the people that do drink all night. But
hmm
I wasn't a sipper. Were you a sipper?
No, definitely
No,
not. No.
no. Chugging
Yeah.
seemed appropriate. I guess
Yeah.
that's encouraged in college too, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it didn't seem any different. And after a few drinks, I couldn't tell the difference between who was sipping and who was binge drinking along with me. So I just thought we were all having a fine time.
I'm sure some of you were.
Right.
Yeah, and I think like environment is really interesting because like you grew up in an environment of drinking, so it looked normal,
hmm
and they were probably the sippers, right? And then when you get into college, everyone's drinking, so it just feels natural according to the environment that you're in. Makes
Yeah,
perfect sense.
absolutely.
So when did drinking become a problem for you? Like you mentioned, people having to take care of you and stuff. Was that kind of the beginning of it?
Well, no, I wouldn't say so. I think that during that time, so many people were binge drinking, and, it was just one of those things where you would just kind of laugh it off. It didn't seem like a big deal. I would say that I started noticing it really having an impact once I was well into being an adult out of college.
Right.
It was when I stopped really partying and binge drinking and going out to bars. I mean, that was problematic for sure, and there were so many things wrong with that time, but it really became when I was drinking every night at home, like,
Mm,
I wasn't partying anymore. I had, both before I had my first child and after, we were doing the adult responsible thing, which is just staying in, having a glass of wine with dinner, which was really a bottle of wine or more. And really, then I had my first child, and then after that, I had pretty awful postpartum depression, and then, of course,
mm,
we had a baby, so we're not going out anywhere, so then it's just drinking all the time, every day, versus binge drinking on Saturdays, and then being hungover all day on Sunday and recovering for a few days. It's more of
right.
just drinking consistently.
Yeah.
I wasn't really, well, I mean, I was sometimes, blacking out, but not like partying, if that makes any sense. I mean, I was just at home doing what I'm supposed to be doing, also while drunk,
Yeah.
and drinking.
How did the alcohol affect your postpartum depression? Did it make it worse or
Oh, yeah.
did it?
I mean, I thought it was making it better. I mean, and it did. Going back to the Annie Grace, scientifically now I know how it worked. It really did take the edge off so well in the first 5 or 10 minutes. I mean, I just immediately just could breathe out, could relax, and I felt
Mm,
wonderful. But within 25 minutes, the cycle begins. My body starts, all the chemicals go haywire, everything starts going wrong. And then I'd have 2 or 3 drinks, and then I'm just, like, really grumpy, in a worse mood than I was before,
yeah.
and really just feeling pretty low. And then it's affecting my sleep. I was waking up, fall asleep/pass slash pass out.
Pass out. Yeah.
Yeah, and then wake up at 2 in the morning, racing thoughts, sweating
Yeah.
profusely,
Yeah.
horrible anxiety, which was really, I mean, it was the postpartum depression/anxiety, and then the chemicals of alcohol on top of that, and it was just miserable. And then the guilt and the shame.
Oh, yeah. That's the worst part. How
Yeah.
do you think it was affecting your parenting?
When I look back, when I'm really honest with myself, I mean, it wasn't great that I was sometimes passed out when I had a baby or 2 at home. They might have cried a little longer before I heard them or woke up to them. I always was doing the responsible thing. This was part of the whole package was just like, do your 100%, giving to the kids so much so that I was neglecting myself completely, which
Right.
was,
Yeah.
and so I do look back. I have these memories of, like, waking up in the morning and they would come to me in their cute little onesie pajamas, and I couldn't remember that I'd put that pair on them and being like, "Oh, those are, I picked out a cute pair of pajamas for them." And then just feeling really ashamed about that. I mean, they luckily, I'm just so thankful that somebody, I mean, my husband and I mean, I think we were coherent enough to care for them and nothing dangerous ever happened.
Yeah.
Because I never really had, like, this rock bottom horrible thing that really happened. It was
Right.
just a perpetual self-hatred,
Oh,
self-loathing that just ate ate at me, every day ongoing.
yeah. I mean, that creates such a vicious cycle that, you wake up and you're like full of self loathing and you beat yourself up. And so your self esteem takes a hit. And by the end of the day, it's the alcohol increasing your baseline level of cortisol. So you feel like you need something to take the edge off. And then the cycle begins.
Exactly. I mean, I woke up every morning, I'm never drinking again. I'm feeling so guilty. I'm being an extra good parent. I'm overcompensating for everything. I
Oh,
call it
yeah.
shame running. I'm, going out for the best run, and I'm, doing planks, and I'm eating organic. You know,
Eating organic while consuming poison. Yeah,
right,
makes sense. Yeah.
exactly. And then noon comes around, and I'm like, well, I'm feeling pretty good. Maybe I can have a drink. And then 5 o'clock, I'm just right back into the same cycle. And
Yeah.
I lived like that for a long time.
That's exhausting.
Yeah.
What happened that you decided to stop?
So my anxiety, I mean, it was just, again, now knowing what I know, like the cortisol, I mean, I just could not. escape it. And I had a pretty rough weekend of just, again, it was supposed to be like a social family thing. My family invited another family. We went to the lake for the weekend. Everybody's just having a good time. Kids are swimming, and I'm just completely blacked out. I mean, I'm can't
Mm.
slurring my speech. I can't say anything coherent. I'm throwing up in front of the neighbor, the people that we
Oh,
invited their children. I mean, just really awful stuff, you
so
know?
embarrassing.
Yeah, exactly. And I woke up that day and I was just like, I cannot. I mean, the anxiety was just so bad. Like I was having just really low thoughts. Like I don't even like to talk about them. A little like not suicidal, but like I don't care if I live anymore. Like
Right.
if
It's pretty
something bad
dark.
yeah, if something bad happens, it's fine. Just put me out of my misery kind of thing. And so I was like, I'd been getting like this for a while. Like, I can like leading up to that for about a month. Every time I drank, I was just feeling so grumpy. I was like picking fights with people, and my husband and I had a date night, and I picked a fight with him, and we ended up just going home early because he couldn't even be out out with me anymore because I'm just full of like anger and angst.
No.
And so I woke up that next day and I was just like, God, I don't think I can live like this anymore. And I don't know. I Googled, I was thinking how cool I was because I drank. I'm sure many, many people listening to this can relate, but I thought that drinking, was really elevating my, personality.
Mm. I think we all have that delusion. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I kind of, I didn't know that I hadn't had like hit a rock bottom, okay? And I didn't think that my mental health was enough of a rock bottom to justify kind of not drinking. Like I just wasn't
Right.
connecting my mental health to it being perpetuated by the alcohol. And I
Right.
just, couldn't figure that out at all. And so, I would after these incidences of like self-loathing and shame, I would go like on a 3-day juice diet because I'm like, maybe I'm, eating too many carbs and I really need to cut back on. So I'm like trying all these things. And then I just had like this little tiny sound or whisper. And it was like, what about the alcohol? Like, have you ever thought about the alcohol? And
Yeah.
so I just kind of I think I was just so low. I just kind of let myself explore this idea.
Mm.
And so it was slow. It wasn't like this, I woke up in jail and I whatever. It was just kind of the slow thing where I just eventually allowed myself to consider the alcohol possibility. And then once I did, I started learning a lot
Yeah.
about the way that it affects, mental health and anxiety specifically.
Is that when you came across the Annie Grace book,
Yeah.
The Naked Mind?
Yeah, I came across a blog and I just kind of liked, again, going back to my childhood. In my mind, everybody who had issues with alcohol were like a male. For some reason, I couldn't identify a single female.
Mm.
Either, I don't know why, but it was like in my life or even on screens. It was always like this
Right.
older male portrayal of like this old guy outside of a, church smoking a cigarette in between, meetings. And so that never even occurred to me as like being an option. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I found this blog and this was like a younger woman. And so that
Yeah.
was, I think, first, it makes so much sense to me, like needing to be able to relate because I wasn't on social media at the time. Like,
What time period is this?
this was in 2017. So,
Oh, okay. Is when you came across the blog and
yeah.
really started questioning it. Did you ever have like family members address your drinking, like express concern, like your husband or your mom or?
Yeah. So my husband, it's funny because he's now sober. He doesn't drink anymore.
Okay.
And he, we drank together. And I would drink as much as he was drinking. Except he's a lot bigger than me. His body isn't the same as mine in terms of like genetic makeup. I mean, he can
Mhm.
metabolize alcohol much differently. And it was
Yeah.
always like this joke, like, oh, Samantha's blacked out again, or like, we just really normalized it. I
Okay.
mean, we just really, really normalized it.
So
And
he was never like, girl, you need to calm down.
I mean, yeah, he was like, girl, you need to get your shit together. Sorry. But it wasn't not like,
He never said you need to stop drinking. Like
no,
alcohol doesn't work for you.
no, no, that would have been nice.
Well, it's interesting that you had to come to the conclusion by yourself. Those of us who were a little out there with our drinking, like I had people telling me, you should not drink. I
Right.
had people who were partying just as much as I was that were saying, I think you have a problem. And I was so offended.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
You drink just as much as I do, but
Right.
I started hearing the messages, but I knew already for myself that it was a problem. So it's interesting that you kind of had to come to that conclusion on your own without any sort of outside pressure.
Yeah, and now that you say it, like, it was a very lonely process for me. Well, I was so confused about the world again, like, I just didn't know what was out there. And I'm sure that, so many of your listeners can relate to this, but I thought I'm the only person in the whole world who's experiencing this,
Yeah,
who has a little bit of a problem with alcohol, but, hasn't hit a rock bottom. I mean, I literally was like, I'm gonna continue drinking like this until I wreck my car into a tree because that's what I thought had to happen before I could stop drinking.
right,
And I think honestly, when it comes to the community of the people that I was with at the time, I think they all thought that too. I mean, I think there still is this kind of stigma that as long as you're going to work and you're taking care of your family and you're not being destructive or harming anyone or harming yourself, like
then it's okay.
then it's
Yeah.
okay. And so I really believe that's why no one ever mentioned anything because we didn't have the information.
Right, right. So you found the blog and started gathering information. And what was the turning point for you? Was there a time where you were like, okay, like you planted your flag in the ground, as they say, and like, okay, I am not going to drink starting today? Like, how did that play
Yeah.
out for you?
I basically from the blog, she recommended some books, and I got all the books, and I really kinda used her whatever she did, I did.
Nice.
You
Yeah.
know? Because I didn't know any other
Yeah.
way, so I just whatever I read that she suggested, I was like, "I'll just do
Okay.
that," and it's cool because, this was a stranger still is, a stranger on the
Yeah.
internet, and so I did tell my husband, I was like, "I think I'm gonna not again, I'm gonna not drink for
Yeah.
30
Yeah.
days,"
Yeah.
you know?
That's a safe bet. Bet.
Yeah. Yeah, so I set out to not drink for 30 days, and during the 30 days, I mean, I was just I was reading a
Mm,
lot, read a ton of other books, including Annie Grace's, a lot of memoirs.
mm. Do you recall the other
Um,
books you were reading at the time?
I read, I think you've had her on the podcast, Girl Walks Out of a
Uh-huh.
Bar. Lisa,
Lisa
I can't think
Smith.
of her last name,
Yeah,
but
she's
yeah,
amazing.
Lisa Smith. Yeah, I read that one. I think it was, I'm getting kind of sticky with the timeline, but The Unexpected Joy
Oh,
of
being sober.
Being
Yeah.
Sober. And then there was Sober Curious.
Oh, Ruby Warrington.
Yeah, Ruby.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I started reading those. I mean, I continued with the blog. Laura McCowan was writing. I think you've
Yeah, I
also
interviewed her too.
had
Yeah, she
her.
did she has the luckiest club.
Yeah, so that it was before that, it was just kind of like her
Oh,
blog.
okay.
So I was just read her stories in her blog, and I equate this to like what I felt then was just like this horrible breakup, like
Yeah.
I wrote in my book, like I felt like I was discovering that the love of my life had another family down down the street.
Such
Like
betrayal.
I felt yes, I felt so betrayed. I mean, again, it was just this breakup and I mourned. I mean, I wallowed around in bed. I acted like, I was just I felt sick all the time, a little bit from my mood, but also from the withdrawal of just having drinking and the adrenaline. And so I really just for that 30 days, I mean, I suffered.
Did you have any kind of a support? Did you know community or anything?
I said that my books, like these people, they were my
Oh,
community
yeah.
because I just would like retreat back to my bed and just read and read and read
Yeah.
and really like rely on these women who were telling their stories to just for kind of support and knowing that I wasn't
Yeah.
alone. But it was a really again, like I didn't have access to I didn't know the cool, awesome Instagram world of sobriety like I do now.
I think we talked before. I was like, I have mixed feelings about that because anybody can just throw up create an account and be like, I'm a sober influencer with 5 days sober. Those people scare me a little
Yeah.
bit.
Right. I know it can be super dangerous, but also like I think I was really lucky. Like I just stumbled across all the right people.
Nice.
It was like I found one right person who was following this good person who was following this good person. And so by the time I got around, I felt like the group, I mean, now I think that many of these people, I mean, like Laura McCowan and, they're all considered, I think, like positive
Yeah, for
influences
sure.
in the
Yeah,
world for sure.
absolutely.
So, but yeah, the first month, it was just super hard and lonely, and I think that I'd been at trying for so long, like, it wasn't just this isn't my first time
Right,
trying.
yeah.
It was my first time being honest,
Oh, yeah.
with what was happening, and I was really coming from this because I was letting myself mourn. I was coming from this from, like, a really self-love, kind of like, "I'm so sorry." Like, "I'm sorry that this happened to
Mm,
you, and I'm just so sorry that this is what's going on right now," versus what I'd done before, which was, "I'm gonna beat myself up, and I'm gonna for the next 10 days, I'm gonna just, eat greens and run and work out and, hate myself."
yeah,
Even more than I already
yeah,
do. So, I was coming from it from a different place, just allowing myself to really, like, grieve,
yeah.
and I think that helped a lot.
Self-compassion is huge. I mean, I firmly believe that you cannot hate yourself well. Like it just
Yes.
doesn't work like that. And so interesting to hear that once you made the shift to practicing self-compassion, that's when you were able to open up and start healing, really.
Right,
Healing
right,
from all
right.
the self-criticism and stuff like that. Yeah. Did
Yeah.
you have any experience with community or maybe old traditional ways of recovery? Did you have any experiences with those communities?
So at first I did not, and it was for the whole first year, I was kind of just on my own. And for the first little bit, I mean, I was really on my own because I'm like, I don't know what's happening here, and so I'm gonna just
Lay
I didn't want
low.
other people to yeah, like, I didn't wanna say, "Oh, I'm not I'm sober now, I'm not drinking," and then, 5 days later, I'm drinking again, like, I really just wanted to, like, think a little bit,
Mhm.
it was really the first time I'd had any time with my brain or my thoughts
Yeah.
or my
Oh
heart in so
no. Yeah.
long. And so I really, for such a long time, I was kind of at it alone. So when I was 1 year sober, I just posted, of course, on Facebook because I'm like, I've made it a year, therefore, I
It's a pretty
am
safe bet.
healed.
Yeah, I'm
I can ride
healed.
off. I can ride off into the sunset on my,
I have
unicorn.
been healed. Witness for all.
Right, exactly. And so I said something, and then so many people started reaching out, and that was awesome. And so that kind of propelled me to want to talk about it a little bit more. And then, like, then I had a community because they were coming to me like, "Oh, wow, how did you do this? I had no idea. What was your story? I think I'm drinking too much. What did you do?"
Wow.
So I really developed a little bit of a community then. And then some people reached out to me who I had no idea that they were sober, but they went to AA and they were like, "Oh, wow, I'm 10 years sober." And I'm like, "What? Wow. Like I had no idea." And I did I was really pumped to be invited to go to an AA meeting here. And, I think, first of all, I was just so naive. I knew nothing. And so I'm coming at it from like this very scientific
Mhm.
approach of like, alcohol really is a poisonous chemical and it is making everything in my life worse. And so go to my first meeting and I'm like, "Hey, everybody," like I'm like, "We all hate alcohol and screw, screw alcohol. Alcohol's the problem." I love myself now. And I kind of got in there and I don't know, when I look back, I think, like, is this my perception of what it was, or was is this really what happened, or is it a combination of both? But it seemed like it was more of like, I'm the problem, like that people were feeling like they were the
Mhm.
problem. And I had just come out of just so many years of hating
Oh,
myself.
right. Yeah.
And when I hear that, I'm like, I can't, like
Yeah.
this isn't. And again, the people there were wonderful and welcoming and super lovely, but I had already kind of like learned I had a different voice in my head, and so I kind of just adhered to that because that's what felt
Yeah,
safe.
yeah, yeah.
And so after that, I started writing a little bit of a blog, and then people really kind of just started.
They were responding to that.
They were, yeah, and so then I kind of created a community of
Nice.
my own that was just kinda like, "Can we meet for coffee so we can talk about this?" And
Yeah.
it felt so great.
Yeah.
I call it sober blind dates now because I still get people who are like, "Would you wanna have coffee?" Because I'm not, I don't coach, I'm not teaching about,
Yeah.
sobriety, but I'm happy to tell people my story, and so then I'm just having conversations with
Yeah.
people, and, over the years, I grew a little community of
Nice.
people that had similar experiences, a lot of, like, mom
Yeah.
friends who had postpartum depression, who had some mental
Right.
illness,
Yeah.
and just learned the way that alcohol was affecting that.
I just want to acknowledge and really appreciate your perspective of what an affront it can be to come out of such a shameful experience and then find self-compassion and self-love only to be confronted with ideas that I'm the problem, right? And that's kind of one of the things I wish we could reframe about that, because I feel like it's close, but it kind of misses something really important, which is I'm at the center of my decisions and my behaviors, and I need to take responsibility for what's, within my control and stuff like that. So would I kind of wish there was I wish we could reframe that in a different ways, like instead of saying things like character defects, those are really survival skills, right? Like, do you know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
and listen, when I got sober 30 years ago, there was literally nothing else. And I
No.
was in so much shame. And I knew I was the problem. Like I knew
Right.
I had friends who could drink and I knew I couldn't. So I was like, oh, clearly
Mhm.
I'm the problem. Right. And they were like,
Right.
yeah, you are. So do these things, do it different. Here's how you do it different. And I was like, cool. I needed to,
Right.
so I was just like in a different mind space. I think if I had gotten sober today, I probably may have done something more like what you have done, and completely miss like the magic of the 12 steps, like the process. I always have to advocate. I always feel so, because that's like what saved my life. I feel like I have to advocate for the process while staying open to the fact that you don't have to do it that way.
Right. Well, and I do know now, and it's funny because so many of the women that I am kind of surrounded by, like many of them, after a certain period of time, they do want more community. And so I've found now through knowing them, like there are so many different places that I could have gone, so many different meetings, and I probably wouldn't have been met with maybe that feeling. And again, it was a different time.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like now I'd walk in with just so much more, openness, and now I know more about that recovery
Yeah.
process where I didn't know anything before.
Yeah.
And so I do, I was talking once with a friend of mine, and she's like 25 years sober, and she was like, we were talking about AA, and she was just like, but why do you do it alone when you can have all of this magic? And I was like, I hear you. And I would do it, but I did it without, and now it's like a time thing, and I'm kinda I'm okay now. I don't need that as much as I would have in the
Yeah.
beginning, and so but yeah, I in no way blame that meeting. Like I said, it was probably just where I was at the time, and I was just so protective of
Yeah.
my kind of like liberation from this hatred thing that, and a little bit freed from knowing just the science around alcohol that,
Yeah.
that really I mean, it made sense that I would grab another drink because it's a super addictive chemical,
Right. Yeah.
not just because I was completely flawed, you
And
know?
and to be fair to you, I mean, shame is a very painful, difficult, and it sounds like you had enough, right? And
Yeah,
when you're
exactly.
sensitive to, like, when you've come out of it and but you're still kind of sensitive to it, it's
Yeah.
I could see how it would be hard to stomach.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm writing
exactly.
a whole book about like a 12-step guide for skeptics because
Oh,
yeah, the hill
yeah.
I will die on is that it's and you can still do it. Like you can still do the 12-step process, and like number one, you don't have to go to meetings, or it doesn't have to, like
Right.
you can reframe all the things that there's just a way to get past all that stuff. So because the process itself is pretty cool.
And I think that's super interesting, and would love to read your book. And I just recently came across something. It was a guy, and he was using the 12 steps for he's not an alcoholic. He's just using the 12 steps
Yeah.
because they enhance his life,
Yeah, yeah.
and I love that.
Yeah.
I love that concept. Yeah, I think that that book would be super super
Yeah.
helpful because and now I just know there are so many different ways, and it's good for everyone because
They're all legitimate. Yeah. Whatever brings you peace. Well, can we talk about your book though? Because listen, congratulations on writing and publishing this book, Alive AF. AF. It could be taken a couple different ways. I think you mean alcohol-free?
Alcohol free. Yes, I do.
I love it. I love alcohol-free. Tell me a little bit about, like, the writing process, what's in the book. What do you love most about the book?
Thank you for asking about that. I really, it's funny because when my editor, when I was working with her, I had loved writing and I'd actually started a couple of blogs like long before blogging was even a thing. And now I think I should have really stuck with it because I would
Ah, you'd
probably
be
be making a lot of
famous
money.
now.
I know. At least I could get an ad or something going on,
Yeah.
But she said, sometimes, don't you think sometimes we self-destruct just so we can write? I was like, maybe that's what it
Maybe.
was. But writing really became like a replacement for me and
Mm,
all the times and hours that I didn't know what to do with
yeah.
myself, I would
Yeah.
write. And I had like a new lease on life kind of. And
Yeah.
so I had all these ideas and so much,
Energy.
insight. Yeah, and energy, exactly. And, I signed up. I thought I was gonna write a self-help book, like a just here's how I stopped
Yeah.
drinking, and then I met Anna David,
Oh,
and,
yeah, yeah, I love her.
yeah, and so I signed up for a memoir course, and literally had to Google, "What is a memoir?"
Yeah, yeah, that's
Like,
fair.
what and so, then I started realizing, like, just how powerful storytelling
Mhm.
is and just how, like, I had a background in working in mental health and therapy, and, it was wonderful and great, but I didn't you can't really share stories, it's
Right.
unprofessional to, like, tell your story to a client who's coming for help.
Yeah,
But I love reading
yeah,
stories, like, sit me down like a child and tell me your story, and I'm gonna be in awe, I just wanna hear what happened, and so I just found this to be, like, really a replacement for drinking, and writing just became this huge passion that I had and still
yeah.
have, and so writing the book was really, really fun, I mean, for the most part,
Yeah,
like,
let's be real, it's hard.
Right, exactly, it was
It's
super hard,
hard.
but it was great to just be able to kind of put this story on paper,
Aw.
and I think because my story is so basic, like, it's the most boring story,
Mhm.
like, I'm a pretty basic
Relatable,
person,
though, so relatable.
Right, and I think people maybe needed to hear that because, I did with the whole time, the intention is just like, if one person reads this and it just even doesn't change their life, but just gives them some insight,
Yeah.
like, that would just be a dream.
Mm,
And really, since the books come out, like, I get so much feedback about that. Like,
yeah.
you just changed my whole perspective. And
Wow.
now and so it's been just really, really awesome. And I had the worst vulnerability hangover after the book was
What do you
published,
mean?
like, just kind of like I just wrote my whole story. Well, first of all, there was a lot of like, why am I writing a book about myself?
Oh.
Like, I'm not a president, I'm not a famous person. Like, what am I
Imposter
thinking here?
syndrome.
Yes, and then once it came out, just some of my most tender moments I've just, put out there for the whole world, not the whole world, a very
Well,
small amount of people. Yeah, anybody to read. And it felt really, I had a little bit of a kinda like a letdown after that.
I hear that's common.
Yeah, I think it's really common. I try to tell people because I work with some writers now, and I'm just like, you have to build up a little resiliency to that,
Okay.
and feeling like and just any kind of work, like if you were to paint a picture or show someone something that put together, you feel like a little like, "Hey, look at my thing," and you want people to be like, "Yeah, that's awesome." But sometimes they're like,
Did you get
no.
criticism?
I got a little bit of criticism. Yeah, but I mean, it really is it's okay. That is something that before all of this, I would have crushed me. I would have been in bed under my covers, drinking away the day, trying to minimize the
Yeah.
embarrassment. But now I can handle that, and it's been another really great growing experience.
Wow. Do you feel like you have a stronger sense of your self-worth and who you really are? Is that what inoculates you a little bit from the criticism?
Yeah, I think so. And just knowing that I'm definitely gonna make mistakes and I could have done this better, but I'm human and, giving myself grace, which I never gave myself before,
Oh,
and knowing that my intentions are good. Like, I'm not trying to hurt anyone,
right.
I'm just trying to do my little tiny piece and I'm gonna do it messy.
Yeah, I like that idea of being able to do it messy. I know I'm gonna piss off a lot of people with my book because I'm gonna be
Yeah,
calling out some stuff about, the traditional way of getting sober. There's some problems with it that I think if people are aware going in, but I think that's really interesting that you're able to. I feel like it takes so much courage to just get out there and tell your story. I mean, how amazing is that, that now there's a story like yours out there for other women? Because listen, the women are going to be coming up behind you and
yeah,
they're going to look just like you and they need to hear. I love this idea of recovering out loud because they need to, like when you got sober, your image of the middle-aged man smoking a cigarette,
yeah.
like why, I don't know why we all have that image, but that's the image.
I don't
That's
either.
the image I had too. I remember going to an AA picnic when I was 14. My mom dated somebody that was in the program, and an old guy got up and told his story, and then a young woman got up and I was in shock. I was like, I did not, even
Yeah,
at 14, I was like, I didn't know that young women could have a problem with alcohol. It was
yeah.
shocking.
Well, and I don't know about you, but I'm kind of like submersed now into the whole like perimenopause,
Oh,
menopause,
girl.
menopause. And so now I'm realizing too, like the effects of alcohol just on that for anybody, like goodbyes to sleeping, like all kinds of like issues that you can have, that it can have on your hormones in general. And so, yeah, like when I think about, I don't know why I had this image.
Yeah,
And so many more women are getting sick and dying from
I
alcohol. And I wonder
know.
if it's that same kind of idea. And so, yeah, I'm just out there,
Yeah.
like I said, sharing my story and just hoping that it's just changing a little bit of the perception.
100% is changing it. And I don't know if you ever heard that story about the guy that goes to the beach and there's all these starfish on the shore, and there's a little boy and he's throwing him back in the water, and he was like, "But there are millions of them. Why are you even bothering?" And he's like, "Well, it matters to that one."
Oh, yeah, that's such a great story. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I love
It
that.
matters to that one. And
Yeah.
it's like, we do our part and we tell our stories, and maybe it doesn't reach the masses, but it matters to the one that it does reach.
Yeah, and I mean that's I think about your podcast and I talk about this a little bit like when you're dealing with this, again, like me, because people hadn't approached me, this wasn't like a public thing. So it was a
Right.
very lonely thing. And
Yeah.
I needed strangers. Like I couldn't go to
Yeah.
my family and my friends with this because I wasn't ready to kind of talk to them about it. I needed the strangers out there to show me a little bit of the way so that I could,
Yeah.
get there. And so I just really feel like that's what I'm doing is giving back because a stranger, I mean, I'm getting
Yeah.
emotional just
I
talking about it,
know, I know. Because a stranger was there for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's such a lonely place, and
Yeah.
it's so funny how we really do all feel like we're unique. Like I'm the only one that feels this way.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah, but nobody, people don't really talk about how dark it gets, but it gets
Right.
dark. It
Yeah,
gets really dark.
absolutely.
Well, listen, I am so grateful that we got a chance to spend some time. What a beautiful share. I really appreciate you. I might ask you to hang tight when we end because I have a couple questions about book
Oh,
publishing.
yeah, I know, I'm like, I really wanna tell her this, but I know not to do it right now.
Yeah, don't hang up when we end. But
Yeah, yeah.
I wanna make sure that people do two things. I want to make sure they get your book, so I'll leave links in the show notes to get your book. But where can they find it? Do you have a website or?
Yeah, I mean, the book is also it's on Amazon. I do have a
Perfect.
website. It's SP Samantha Perkins aliveaf.com. And then I have a little Substack where I'm writing there, but you can
Oh,
find all that
nice.
information on my website.
Okay, I'll leave links to your website and I'll actually leave a link to the actual book in the show
Okay.
notes to your Amazon. So we could just like,
Yeah.
as the easier we can make it for people to, like one or two clicks to
Yeah.
get the book is awesome. But I'm also going to leave a link to your TED Talk in
Oh,
there as
yeah.
well. Cause God, I just feel like that is such a huge accomplishment.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Well done on all the work that you're doing. I really appreciate you.
Same. Likewise.
Thanks. All right. We'll talk again soon.
Okay.
One last thing before you go, if you enjoyed the podcast today, please don't forget to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and leave a review. And if you'd like to make a donation to the podcast and help me keep the lights on, you can do so by visiting odatchat.com. There's a donation button or membership button on the right-hand side. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us.